And we go around, the area. We hear Kenzie Page. Oh, I want to give it back to the children. We see her significant other. I forget his name. I do apologize. Saying like, oh, I'm going to get a bunch of new surfboards, maybe a race car. Oh, and help the children by opening a wrestling school. And then we get to Eric Stevens. Aaron Stevens. Sorry, Eric Stevens is another dude. So, he pretty much says, look, you guys can do whatever you want. I've lived the high life. I'm going to help the next generation. So, yeah, that was... Oh, no, wait, that's not this segment. So, that's a segment for a little later. This segment is actually a Bit Crush, which is the anime store, I guess. We have Mike Mondo just demanding the manager, the boss. He's saying, I want to see Mel. Where's Mel? So Mel comes out with the, I'm going to call him a therapist, group leader, whatever his name is, along with Tiffany Nieves. So this storyline is getting a little bit more involved. So Mike Mondo's pretty much yelling, oh, I can't believe you. You're out here with these losers. You're a champion too. Need to knock you back to the Stone Age. So then Tiffany replies and says, you got the audacity to talk to me this way? You want to take on the two double champion? You also don't talk to my friends that way. Again. So, yeah, looks like Tiffany Nieves, Mel, and I forget the other dude's name. And they're gonna be a group, apparently? I don't know what this is gonna be. So, another segment, we see Knox and Murdoch. They're in the back. They're kind of going back and forth. Okay, one of us has to take on Smalls. Who's it going to be? Blah, blah, blah. They play a little Rochambeau in which they both throw the exact same, rock, paper, scissors. So then, Murdoch turns to the camera, says, alright, we'll figure this out. So, that's going to be something interesting. Here's something that's a little unexpected. We got Alex Misery of the Lost. One-on-one action against the debuting Rich Swann. Honestly did not see that coming. This was honestly a really, really fun matchup. Rich Swann still has energy I wish I had, but here we are. And then Misery keeping up. That was really good. And after a super kick, Phoenix Splash combo, your winner, Rich Swann. So, again, I'm going to say this. If you watch one match this week, I can recommend this one. So then we see Eric Stevens in the back. He's with Carson Drake again. Although that's not revealed until later. So Stevens says, I see you guys in your Johnny Cash outfits. You're the top of the bottom of the barrel, which is a hell of an insult. So then Stevens says, you need directions. It's clear what you're doing clearly isn't working. You think you know all, but you don't. I've made more money than you've ever seen. You don't understand. You're lost. Stevens continues, I understand why you live in your little bubble pretending you're a pro, but you'll never be that. You want to be on top. you have so much potential, but my patience is done. So you've got 24 hours to accept my offer. So camera cuts to Carson Drake, who says, I don't need 24 hours. The answer is no. So then we cut back to Aaron Stevens' face, who's just got like a, I can't believe he just did that face on it. Which, that pissed him off. So, I'm not sure if we're going to see an Aaron Stevens Carson Drake feud, but that could be interesting. Now, out comes Eric Smalls. He's on his own. No backup. And out comes Knox and Murdoch. They're still kind of trying to decide. They get in the ring. They're kind of conversing with one another. Ref comes over, tries to shoo one of them out of the ring. He's like, okay. At first we do see Murdoch, Mike Knox get out of the ring kind of quickly. Then Murdoch grabs the ref, kind of pushes him in the corner, with Mike Knox hitting a huge crossbody on Eric Smalls. And they just beat up poor Eric Smalls, including using Mike Knox's entrance poncho to choke the life out of him. And then they line up for the high-low, but Eric Smalls is way too short. So then Knox and Murdoch get on their knees, hit a mini high-low to end the segment. So, that's definitely going to be interesting to see how that goes. Especially with the winners of the Crockett Cup right around the corner. So next we see the segment I mentioned earlier about recently deceased person giving out some money. Kenzie Page obviously saying her thing. So then we see Kenzie Page's significant other and a few other guys be like, look, if he's gonna talk shit, we're getting out of here. So, like, 2 or 3 of them get up and leave. But Kenzie stays, which is very, very interesting. So, next, we get a Tom Latimer promo. He's outside the arena somewhere. And he says, I like a good fight. I'm going to defend this title all over the world. And I think I found my possible next opponent. But it's not you, Thrillbilly. I understand you calling me out. But in the Jack Stain Memorial Tournament, you got eliminated in the first round. So you got to go out there and prove you're worthy of a world title shot. Until then, you get to the back of the line, and I'll be waiting for you to step up to me. So, a challenge issued by Latimer. We'll see how Thrillbilly answers it. And then we got the semi-main event. And it's for the NWA Women's TV title. As Alina James, formerly, God, I forget her name in WWE. She used to manage Legado del Fantasma. Elektra Lopez, that's who it is. As she takes on Tiffany Nieves. And I'm going to say this. Actually, no, that's not who this is. That's next week. So, this was a very, very interesting little matchup. A lot of really good back and forth. Alina James is honestly really underrated. But, after a spinebuster and then a royal seat, your winner, Tiffany Nieves, keeping the women's television title and keeping the Lucky 7 active. If you don't know, for the TV, there's a stipulation for the TV title, both the men's and the women's, where if you win 7 matches successfully defending the title, you get a world title shot. So then we get this weird Natalia Markova promo, where she pretty much says, I'm ready to face you, Kenzie Page. I ran through your little sister. There's nowhere left. There's no one to hide behind anymore. Who else will you be sending my way? I'm ready to be NWA Women's Champion. So, definitely a nice fired up promo, but it felt like she got rushed a little bit. Not sure why. Then we got Joe Kazana with AJ and KC. They're in somewhere in the bowels of the arena. Hyping up the Country Gentlemen. Saying how Territory A doesn't stand up to JCP. So then AJ chimes up, says, we're going to eat them up like burgers once they step up to us. So it does look like, and there's an intra-promotional thing going on between the territories, which could be interesting. And then we got the main event of the evening. We got the NWA National Champion, Mims, no title on the line, taking on a man who we haven't seen in NWA in a couple years. It's the Pope, a.k.a. D'Angelo De Niro, a.k.a. Elijah Burke. And this match started off a little slowly. Definitely saw a couple of lockups at first. Pope going for a crossface, but Mims powering out. It then got brought to the next level after a couple dueling shoulder tackles, big old suplex, an atomic drop by the Pope, into a big old clothesline, and then a flapjack by Mims. Then Mims, he's in the mounted position. He's ready to pummel the Pope, but he falters. Pope then gets up out of it. It's a big splash in the corner. Big old suplex, couple of clotheslines. Enziguri for a 2 count. Mims fights back. Misses on a splash. Pope with an uppercut. Then an Elijah Express, which is a very interesting move name to come back with to pick up the win. So we got a win over the national champion. We'll see where that goes. And as Pope is celebrating, out comes Slade and Mike Mondo, who I guess are still a team, and they attack the Pope post-match. Mike Mondo has Pope prone. Slade gets a chair from outside the ring. Big old chair shot to the leg to end the show. Yeah, this was a very interesting flowing show, but I enjoyed it. This was matches were pretty crisp, especially with the Pope, who I was very surprised to see definitely still got it. So that was NWA Power. We now move to the AEW Dynamite and the 6-year anniversary. So, to start off, we got the Young Bucks. They still have their sack full of money, with Matt telling Nick, oh, I got a few ideas for our entrance. We're going to make it big, elaborate for the 6-year anniversary. So, Nick walks off. Matt looks at the bag, looks at the casino behind him, and then we just have a montage of Matt losing all that money. So then next Next scene we see is Matt. He's sitting right next to the empty sack of money. Nick walks up, says, "Alright, where's that money?" Matt kind of just points to the empty bag. Nick picks it up, goes to dump it out. There's nothing in it. So Nick says to Matt, "You lost everything?" So then there was a really good transition of them standing side by side, still outside, to them in the ring with the match graphic, "The Broke Bucks." They don't get an entrance. It's, oh god, the trolling of the Young Bucks is just so good. And that leads us into our first matchup of the evening, as the Young Bucks team up with Josh Alexander to take on the AEW Tag Team Champions, Brody King and Bandito, and Kenny Omega making his return from injury. And to start us off, we get Josh Alexander versus Kenny Omega. A match that was teased in Impact Wrestling during the pandemic, but now we get it here, and they worked really, really, really well together. Brody King doing his big old super heavyweight stuff. One point, Bandito goes for the 21 plex. That gets blocked. Then the three heels have the faces. Big old pile drivers. Only gets a 2 count. Then eventually Kenny tags in. Goes for the V-trigger. Misses. Alexander with some suplexes. Bucks get in. Hit some super kicks. It's definitely something else. Josh Alexander with a flatliner. Locks in the ankle lock on Kenny Omega, while the Young Bucks take care of Brodito. Eventually, Kenny Omega gets out of that. Young Bucks go for the TK driver, but Brodito break it up. Bunch of suplexes from the big guys. Powerbomb by Brody King. A couple of V-triggers from Kenny Omega. 21 plex by Bandito, in which Bandito takes out the Young Bucks with a dive. One winged angel from Kenny Omega for the face team to pick up the win. And then a short celebration. Brodito go to the back, which, I don't know, their opponents are still out there. I figured they'd have his back. So then we have a little powwow between Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, which is very, very interesting. They got tons of history. We don't really hear what's said, but the next moment, Josh Alexander attacks Kenny Omega from behind. He's just beating the tar out of Kenny Omega. But the Young Bucks don't join in, which is very interesting. But that brings out the returning Jurassic Express. That's Jungle Boy Jack Perry and Luchasaurus. They make the save. They fight off the Young Bucks for a little while. And then Kenny and Jack Perry have a little face-off. They kind of push each other. We don't hear what's said, but I believe they had a feud for a little while. Then Perry pushes Kenny Omega out of the way, dives on the heels. Then Jurassic Express, Luchasaurus with the big choke slam to Josh Alexander. He then joins Jack Perry in brawling to the back with the Bucks. And then Kenny Omega just grabs a microphone, which, nonchalant, that shit didn't happen. He says, 6 years, I've been here since day one. Sometimes it doesn't matter how pleasant the journey is, but I'm so glad so many of you have been here since day one. Even if this is your first show, that's okay. I made many friends along the way, and I am a better person because of that. Thank you, everyone who's joined us. And with that being said, I bid you adieu. Good night. Bang. And as soon as he goes to get out of the ring, the lights go out. Which is universal sign it's either a return or a debut. Lights come back on. There's a masked superstar in the ring. Takes off the mask. It's Andrade, who just got released from the WWE. And he just starts beating the heck out of Kenny Omega, hitting the message. Then Don Callis appears from out of nowhere. Well, he was on commentary for the match. He enters the ring, and then he and Andrade shake hands. So we got a new member for the Don Callis family in Andrade, which is absolutely nuts. But it doesn't stop there. I'll tease that. But before that happens, we get highlights from the 6 years that Dynamite's been on the air, including some footage of CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, which I'm glad there's not that much hard feelings between these guys. So then we see backstage Mark Briscoe sitting in whatever hallway they're in, with Briscoe saying, now should be a time for celebration, but also a time for reflection. MJF, you'll all talk. You need to keep my brother's name out your mouth. And I showed you at All Out that words have consequences. I finally won big at All Out, but I know I need to win some gold. You cost me my TNT title shot, but now it's Orange Cassidy's turn. We'll get to that in 1 second. I am not a selfish man. I can be happy to see my friend succeed. And I'm going to be with him celebrating while you're licking your wounds at home. And yeah, that was a nice little segment from Mark Briscoe. Could we see a Mark Briscoe heel turn in the future? Maybe that's what that's setting up. I'm not sure. Although Mark Briscoe is really popular. Anyway, we go to the TNT title on the line as Kyle Fletcher defends against Orange Cassidy. Now, this was meant to be a hologram spot, but it turns out he got hurt. He re-injured his knee, in which, feel better soon hologram, miss you dude. So, Orange Cassidy is taking his place. This match absolutely ruled. They brought the entire kitchen sink against one another. But after a big old... Actually, before the finish to the match, out comes Hologram. Although he is wearing a very weird suit, but it's the usual blue and green mask. He initially runs off Don Callis. Orange Cassidy wants on the top rope, but then he pushes Cassidy off the top. Enough for Fletcher to get off, hit a brainbuster on the top turnbuckle to pick up the win and retain his title. At that point, we see Fletcher and Hologram attack Orange Cassidy post-match. Then the rest of the conglomeration and Roderick Strong come out, run off Fletcher and Hologram. At that point, we see at the top of the ramp, Don Callis, Hologram, and Kyle Fletcher at the top of the ramp. The rest of the Callis family come out. And then we see Hologram unmask to see a red and black mask underneath. So this is El Clone. If you don't know who this is Hologram's dark other, I guess. I guess we could call him El Glitch for a little while, because I think that's a lot better. So yeah, the hologram clone is also a member of the Don Callis family. I guess that's fine for now with hologram out due to injury, and it gives him something to do for the time being. So next we go backstage for a Mercedes Moné interview. I'm not stupid. We're celebrating me, but also the 6-year anniversary of Dynamite. That's why next week on Dynamite, I'm putting my TBS title on the line, and I want to face someone from Florida. If you don't know, next week's Dynamite, actually Tuesday's Dynamite, I'll get into that in a minute, is going to take place from Daly's place, which was home. It's pretty much the home base of Dynamite for a while. Especially during the pandemic. So she wants to defend a native for the title, which, that's cool. Then Renee brings up the tag team title, women's tag team titles, with Moné saying, "Oh, you know how much I love tag wrestling. I want tag wrestling to be the best in the world. But I want to know who's my partner going to be." Then Puppet Harley shows up, which I completely forgot about this, and says, "It's Harley time." So Moné and Puppet Harley argue for a minute. We zoom out. We see Harley's there, with Moné asking, "Don't you team up with everyone?" Then Harley says, "Yes, but we have the greatest chemistry in the world." Moné stops her, says, "Every time we team up, you lose." So the answer is no. Moné walks off. Harley turns to Renee, says, "Oh, playing hard to get." Which, that's just hilarious. I love Harley Cameron as a character. She kind of reminds me of Mick Foley back in the day. Not too far back. Not like yeah, she's kind of Mankind-esque when he decided to go corporate. Which, I got no issue with that. Harley is hilarious, and she's getting way better in the ring. So, more Harley, I'm here for. Also going to be interesting to see who steps up. A lot of people are saying Sarray, who is currently the IWGP Women's Champion. So, yeah, we'll see about that, I guess. So next up, we got a little 6-man tag team action. We got the Death Riders, so that's Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Daniel Garcia, taking on the Ops, so that's Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, and filling in for Shibata, who I guess is hurting. It's the AEW World Champion, Hangman Adam Page. And the chemistry between these 6 guys, it was a beautiful match, beautiful carnage all over the place. Eventually, match ending with a Deadeye and a Buckshot Lariat for the win for Hangman Page and the Ops. And as Samoa Joe and Hobbs have their arms raised up by the ref, Hangman grabs 2 of the Trios titles, because Shibata's not there, hands it to Hobbs, and then kind of shoves the other one into the chest of Samoa Joe, who then loses it, and it falls to the floor. So then Joe just gets straight up in Hangman's face. They stare down for a little bit. Hobbs backs Joe off, and then security comes out to hold them back. Then Joe says to Hangman, "You haven't beaten me," and just slaps the taste out of his mouth. And then they keep brawling for a minute. Security backs them off to finish the segment. So, yeah, we're going to continue this little bitty in a second. But that match, I'm going to say, go check it out if you haven't. But the setup for this coming match, that's not going to be bad. So next we get like a video promo from Jet Speed and Willow Nightingale, along with FTR and Stokely, with Jet Speed wanting to face FTR at some point, one-on-one. FTR obliges, saying on Collision, we got a surprise for Willow Nightingale. That's going to be interesting. Can't wait to see that. Although I didn't really watch Collision this week because I ended up watching playoff baseball. No offense to Collision. I'm sure it was great. So then we get a Hangman Adam Page interview. I'm going to say they're like just off Gorilla. With Hangman saying, Dynamite's been on for 6 years now, and Joe threw a little bitch fit because I handed him his title. He says, "You never beat me." It's obvious this is about the AEW World title, and I only hold this because of you. So at Wrestle Dream, it'll be you versus me for the title. And Joe, I respect you, but you throw a fit like that again, I'll make you regret it. Whoa, some fighting words from the Hangman. Now that's cowboy shit right there. And also, Joe versus Hangman. I'm in. Let's do it. So next up, a very kind of thrown together match. I know Tay Mello challenged Tony Storm on Twitter. But I need a little bit more than that. Anyway, this match was a little awkward to start. Tay Mello definitely has a little rust. But oh boy, by the end, this was a hell of a bout. Going back and forth. With Tay Mello countering a Storm Zero. Mello goes for a TKO, but that gets blocked into a suplex. A hip attack, and then a Storm Zero to pick up the win. In post-match, you see Tony Storm checking on Tay Mello, helping her up to her feet and out of the ring. And then at that point, Tony Storm grabs the microphone and says, "At All Out, when the bell rang, I didn't hear victory or defeat. I heard nothing. It messed me up. And I stared at her because she was everything I wasn't. When I left the ring, all the questions followed me. Without the title, who am I?" And at that point, there was a beat and maybe a little bit of booing from the crowd. We'll get there. And then Tony brought the mic back up to her mouth saying, "Statlander, I'm not finished with you. I need to know one-on-one. Name the time and the place, and I'll be..." And then she freezes. She kind of looks up. Looks like she was looking at the Tron, but we never really got a follow-up for it because we moved to a Collision card rundown, which looked very good. We then had an Eddie Kingston versus Dralistico hype video, which that was very well done. And honestly, welcome back, Eddie. Missed you, bruh. So then we're somewhere else in the arena for a Powerhouse Hobbs Samoa Joe interview. With Joe saying, Hangman challenged me. There's no surprise there. That might have been a misunderstanding, maybe not. But most understood. You forgot who I am. I'm Samoa Joe, a man you never beat. And you and me, a little cowboy shit. Let's me welcome you to the world of this shit. And Joe just walks off. Hobbs is kind of looking confused. But yeah, this is going to get interesting real quick. So at that point, we see Ricochet join commentary, which, honestly, Ricochet in charge of his own crew, that's great. As we see the Gates of Agony, so that's Toa Leona and Bishop Khan, take on the Swirl, so that's Lee Johnson and Blake Christian. Those two have been teaming on Ring of Honor for a while. Now they're coming over to AEW proper. And this match was honestly pretty good. A lot of really power moves by the GOA. Swirl bringing up the speed. But after a big old hip attack by Toa, big double knees from Bishop Khan, and then open the gates. So your winners, the GOA. Then post-match, GOA and Ricochet attack the Swirl. At that point, the Hurt Syndicate come out on the stage. MVP with the microphone says, I got a couple of questions for you. Any 945 area codes in the building gets a little pop. Any 847s gets another pop. I forget the last area code he said, so I just put 5150 just because. That got an even louder pop. So he says, Ricochet, this is my neighborhood. At All Out, I embarrassed myself, and I owe all these fans an apology, as well as my boys. I allowed you two backup dancers to beat me. Maybe I've lost a step. Maybe I'm not the wrestler I used to be, but I can still fight. So next week at Homecoming, I don't want to wrestle. I want us in a street fight. So Ricochet, you got my answer. One answer. Either it's yes or no. So Ricochet grabs his own microphone, says, I see your street fight next week. I'm happy to oblige your requests. And then they just have a stare down, which, honestly, nice little setup for this. We'll see how this finishes, because street fight's going to be very, very interesting. So next, we get a Chris Statlander interview saying, Tony, 6 years of crossing paths. All this time has passed. We've never had a one-on-one match, which is crazy to think about because these two should have by now. So, Statlander finishes, let's do this at Wrestle Dream. So then we go to another part of the arena with the Don Callis family, with Callis taking the lead. With Callis saying, once you think we're out, we add more. We took out Omega, who threw out Brodito. You two threw out a challenge for Okada and Takeshita for next week, which we accept. So we see Takeshita and Okada, they're standing next to each other. Takeshita is then like, with him? Okada then kind of turns around, gives him a interesting little look, with Don trying to settle things down. No, guys, it's going to be great. We're going to do so well. So that, I don't think I heard Brodito issue that challenge. I would have liked to seen it on TV, but if it leads to this interesting matchup, I am in. So finally, we got our main event of the evening, and it's a tornado mixed tag match. So no tags needed, and it's an intergender match. So meaning we can have the men and the men fight, women and the women, men and the women. So we got the Death Riders being represented by Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir, who I don't remember the last time seeing wrestle, taking on Chris Statlander and Darby Allin. And as the Death Riders are making their entrance, Darby and Stat jump the Death Riders in the crowd. They kind of brawl into the crowd. Darby throws Yuta into a 6-year anniversary banner that's kind of just like, I guess, a divider for some reason. That looked very strange. Statlander with an electric chair drop ringside. Eventually, they do brawl back into ringside. Yuta grabs a couple of chairs. Actually, no, Darby grabs the chairs, just beating down Yuta and Shafir. Darby then sits Yuta down into an extended chair, goes for a dive. Yuta moves. Darby then just hits the chair on the rebound, which that looked gnarly. A little later on, we see Statlander suplex Yuta into a stack of chairs. Yuta and Darby then brawl into the barricade. We see Shafir and Statlander trading strikes. Then we see Statlander do the boop, which we haven't seen in years. And we see Yuta suplex Darby into the timekeeper's table. Then we see Darby stick Yuta's arm into the ring post, not between the ring post and the turnbuckle, in the ring post. And Darby just starts hitting it, which that looked gnarly. He goes for another move, but then Yuta counters it, hits a neck breaker onto the apron. At that point, we see Yuta go under the ring, grab a familiar black bag, gets back into the ring, dumps the thumbtacks out. He then hits an angle slam, barely missing the tacks. Shafir goes for a suplex, that gets blocked into a DDT. Shafir locks in a sleeper. Statlander powers out. Hits a suplex on Shafir into the tacks. But then Yuta with a chop block before she can follow up. Then Yuta somehow gets a handful of powder. Goes for the powder shot on Statlander. Stat moves. That hits Shafir. Darby Allin with a rear naked choke. And then Statlander hits a 450 onto Shafir. Darby with a coffin drop for their teams to pick up the win. And as they're celebrating, Toni Storm comes out on the ramp. Statlander meets her. They have a stare down. And then they just brawl to the back with security in tow, which that's definitely interesting. Darby then continues his attack on Yuta, but Pac comes out and makes the save. And then Pac just choking out Darby Allin with his belt. This brings out the rest of the Death Riders. So that's Mox, Claudio, and Dragon Lead, Daniel Garcia. They surround Darby. Moxley then has a microphone. He gets down to Darby's level and says, "At WrestleDream, you have zero chance to win. Do what you think you gotta do to beat me. I don't know how I'm gonna make you do it, but for the first time in your life, I'm gonna make you say, I quit." I'm gonna say this, I'm still loving Jon Moxley's character. He's devious, he's dangerous, and He's a loose cannon. I cannot wait to see that match at Wrestle Dream. That's going to be great. And I'm going to say this. Tony Khan, that match should main event. And I am totally serious about that. So that's AEW Dynamite, the 6-year anniversary. Only really 2 big surprises, which I'm not surprised that much by it, but yeah, it was a very entertaining show. I do wish there was a little bit more to it, though. Like, the matches were all good, the segments were either hilarious or really drew me into the story. But there's a little bit missing that I don't know what it is. So we are going to finish up with MLW Slaughterhouse. This is MLW's usual Halloween-themed show, which is a whole lot of fun. We start off with the World Heavyweight Title Chamber of Horrors match. I'm going to tell you this, it's been a while since I've seen this match. Basically what happens, we have 6 competitors. They're all locked into a steel cage. Cage is wrapped in barbed wire. There's weapons available. And the way you win is put one of your opponents into an electric chair and turn the switch on. Which, that is definitely convoluted, but I kind of dig convoluted. So our competitors competing for the World Heavyweight title, Matthew Justice, both CW and Brock Anderson. So apparently Brock was a surprise, which, I don't know, not much of a surprise. Mr. Thomas, formerly of the Bumaye Fight Club. I have no idea what happened to Alex Kane. Hopefully he's okay. And a big surprise, someone I did not see coming, the masterpiece, Chris Adonis, a.k.a. Chris Masters. Always great to see him. He is really still a really good wrestler. And they're all competing against the World Heavyweight Champion, Mads Kruger. Hail Contra. Yeah, this match was a cluster. Like, half the time I couldn't tell what was going on. Mostly they were just throwing each other into the steel cage. There was definitely a table bump at some point. So at one point we had Chris Adonis with the master lock on, I want to say it was CW, trying to get him into the electric chair. CW blocks it. Then we see a big splash by Kruger. He takes Brock Anderson, sits him in the electric chair. Looks like he's about to hook him up, but CW saves him with a chair shot. Then Kruger turns around, goozles CW, sits him in the chair, sets up the contraption, flips it on, and yeah, apparently CW got electrocuted. And yeah, your winner, still MLW World Champion, Mads Kruger. This was a cluster. Like, this was less of a match and more of a spectacle. It had tones of the Elimination Chamber from which Elimination Chamber was that? That weird ECW show from like 2007 or so. Now, was it bad? No, not really, but it was, I understand why it went on first. So, yeah, we're going to see where this Kruger title run goes. But before that, we get an MLW hype video, which was very, very weird. Although, at this point, the crew is getting the cage down. And then we have a Shotzi Graveyard Shift segment, where Shotzi Blackheart comes out, pretty much says, no one is safe from the monsters in the ring, or me. She brings out the MLW Tag Team Champions. That's Dijak and Dreyer. I forget his first name. Formerly Baron Corbin, a.k.a. the Skyscrapers. So Shotzi goes on, I feel like I've summoned a couple of demons. So Corbin says, we're always looking for a fight. But everyone in the back is too soft to challenge us. Then Dijak grabs a microphone and says, every person in the back and in the crowd knows who lost at Fightland, knows I should have been world champion. Then Shotzi asks about the association with Hammerstone. Dijak says, whoa, that's business between us. Then at that moment, Contra's music hits. Out comes not only Kruger, but the Sentai Death Squad, and they just brawl to the back of the arena. And this weirdly brings out Don Gato, who gives Shotzi a shot of his tequila, which is very weird. They take a shot together. Shotzi then asks, Don Gato, have you got anything to say to the people? He takes the microphone, doesn't say a word. There's a beat. Then out comes Ikiro Kwan, who takes the microphone and says, I'm shutting this all down right now. The second you, Don Gato, got involved in my match, I know you were bad news. I don't want to wait until the next show. I want to fight you right now. So Don Gato, with a big old kick to Ikiro Kwan's face, puts on the brass knuckles and gives him a shot right to the nose. And yeah, they then go to the back. Shotzi's like, oh, I feel like I need another shot. At that point, on the Tron is Priscilla Kelly, formerly known as Gigi Dolan. And she's either in some limo or somewhere. And she says, a toast to the returning Shotzi Blackheart. MLW has given her everything she's ever wanted. She's nothing more than a parasite. All of this has been meant for me. I am not the Kelly you knew. I am the most vile person in the business. And I'm coming back to burn MLW to the ground. And Shotzi, this blood is on your hands. Oh my goodness, that was crazy. So we are getting Priscilla Kelly versus Shotzi Blackheart in MLW. Sign me up. Hell yeah. So then we have the regular ring announcer introduce Cesar Barro, who is the ring announcer for CMLL, which is, great lucha promotion. As he introduces our next match, which is our first quarterfinal match for the Opera Cup. As we have Star Jr., who is a fill-in for... I forget who he's a fill-in for, taking on Volador Jr. And we see Volador coming out with his crew. I didn't really catch their names. I'm sorry. At that point, we see Volador taking off his gear, kind of pulling the ref back. And then we see his teammates attack Star Jr. on the outside. Actually, that's during the match, which is interesting. So definitely, this was definitely a bit hard to keep up with because these guys are seriously fast. But after a blocked Alabama slam and a weird Rana, which was very strange, Your winner, Volador Jr. And as he's celebrating with his teammates, we find out that the finals for the Opera Cup are going to be set in the Charleston Music Hall in Charlotte. So we are actually going to see an opera house as the final for the Opera Cup, which I'm absolutely cool with that. That should definitely be a fun final. Speaking of, we continue our Opera Cup action with the next semi-final match, as we got Bishop Dreyer, formerly Baron Corbin, taking on Satoshi Kojima, former MLW World Champion. And while this did go a little slowly at first, eventually the energy just picked up. Kojima just has this energy about him that you cannot deny. He is just too dang good. After a cozy cutter for a 2 count, Kojima attempts the lariato. That gets caught into a deep 6 by Corbin. That only gets a 2 count. Corbin with his own lariato for a 1 count, which that was funny. And then a third lariato to pick up the win for Satoshi Kojima in what was a very entertaining matchup. Post-match, Kojima gets up, extends his hand to Dreyer. Dreyer just flips him the bird, which, honestly, that was funny. Then we see Dijak and Kruger continuing their brawl in the back. Then we see the return of Paul Walter Hauser as he joins commentary for our next match. A match I feel like we've seen somewhere before, but we got our next Opera Cup quarterfinal match as we got Austin Aries taking on Paul London. And honestly, Aries' first match last week was a little off. He really turned it on for this matchup. Like, I will give Aries all the credit in the world. He is so dang talented. Really good back and forth. London looked like $1,000,000. But after Aries dives on Paul London, he goes up to commentary table, gets in Paul Walter Hauser's face. And then London, I guess, goes for an attack, but Aries dodges him, having London go into Hauser. They get back in, Aries with a drop kick and then a brainbuster to pick up the win and move on in the tournament. As Aries is going to the back, Hauser is checking on London in the ring, and as London sees Hauser, he pushes him away. And as Paul London is going up the ramp, Hauser grabs a microphone, says, "I didn't want to do this here and now, but I wanted to apologize. That I'm not one of your more famous tag team partners, but you're my trainer and my tag partner. You want to pie face me, that's fine. But you want to know why I wasn't in the chamber? Because you picked Matthew Justice instead of me. Now we can settle this here and now, or we can just let it go." At that point, London and Hauser are yelling at each other off mic on the ramp. And yeah, that's not going to be settled here, I guess. We then get a Don Gato, lore segment, which was very, very weird. Although I'm really liking that this sponsor, I guess, is now canon in wrestling, which is kind of funny. We then get a teaser vignette for the return to MLW of Killer Kross. Hell to the yes. And that brings me to my next point. Anyone from any WWE only fans, will you be watching? Time will tell. So this next match was very, very strange as we get Matt Riddle taking on Alexander Hammerstone. A battle of devices from chat. In that chat on YouTube. Yeah, this was a very weird and interesting matchup. You have Riddle trying to outspeed Hammer. Hammer just completely outpowering Riddle. Hammer kind of midway through attempts a bear hug, but that gets blocked. Combinations of elbows into a suplex. Hammerstone goes for the Nightmare Pendulum, but that gets blocked into a roll-up for a 2 count. Combination knees and bunch of kicks. Then a ripcord knee. Riddle with a floating bro for a 2 count. Super kick for a 2 count. Goes up for the moonsault. Misses. Hammer goes for a powerbomb that gets blocked into a roll-up for a 2 count. Hammer with a big old power slam for a 2. Riddle tries to lock in the tarantula, but that gets blocked. Kind of into a powerbomb for a 2. But then Riddle attempts to lock in the triangle. That gets blocked into a big old powerbomb. Hammerstone goes for a big splash, but hits the ref. Riddle with a Hammer with a shoulder tackle. Hits the Nightmare Pendulum. But at that point, Kruger comes in, attacks Hammerstone. But then Dijak comes in with a chair, hits Kruger in the back. Bishop Dreyer joins in. And then they brawl to the outside, to the back. Then Riddle with a low blow into a roll-up for your win, Matt Riddle. So, yeah, we're going to get to that in a minute. That was definitely a heck of a match. I do wish it wasn't so overbooked, though. So then we get kind of a Matt Riddle interview / promo saying, "Looky here, another beta with a mic," referencing his online interview that he blew up on. Like, there's footage out there. So then he tells the interviewer, "Get your little dog energy out of my ring." So interviewer gets out of the ring, and Riddle says, "I've said a lot already, but I got more to say. I keep you all crying. Though wrestling fans were awesome, I found out you guys are nothing more than a bunch of morons. I work my ass off while you losers sit in their mother's basement and talk. And I've found out you all are just a bunch of bitches. What you don't understand is I do this for fun. I can beat anyone from anywhere. And guess what? The King of Bros is now done. This is now the era of the rude dude." Oi. Yeah, that's a nickname there. So it definitely looks like we're getting a Matt Riddle heel run, which honestly I'm kind of into. Like, let's see what happens there. So next up, we got the MLW Featherweight title on the line as Himawari, I do hope I pronounced that right, takes on the women's champion, the big kaiju, Shoko Nakajima. And this match was a whole lot of fun, including Himawari using her hair braids like Bianca Belair does. Which, I definitely missed that. Lots of really good back and forth. But Nakajima with a DDT and into the big senton to pick up the win. That was a whole lot of fun. And I hope Nakajima stays champion for a little while. She's been great as champion. Then we get a little highlights of the Opera Cup so far. Then we get Salina De La Renta and not Court Bauer. What's his name? The dude who ran Lucha Underground for a while. They're in the back. They're in their office, talking about making history in Charleston, having the biggest matches for the best fans. And then we turn to see Don Gato. He's sitting in like a throne, which is funny as hell. So, God, I forget the dude's name. Says to Don Gato, it's always been good times. Let's see you again sometime. So Don Gato walks off. Then we see Salina De La Renta look down at the desk and say, Dad, Don Gato's brass knuckles aren't here. So the father then says, this is something way more dangerous. A shadow has returned. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but the MLW kind of treating these brass knuckles like they're, Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet. Honestly, that's kind of hilarious, and I am all for it. I am interested to see what comes next. And then we get our main event of the evening. We've got the CMLL announcer out there again to announce our final quarterfinal match for the Opera Cup. We've got Ultimo Guerrero taking on Mystico. And Ultimo Guerrero gets the upper hand almost immediately with using his coat as a weapon and then pushing Mystico out of the ring. They fight on the outside for a little bit, with Ultimo Guerrero trying to obtain a count-out victory, which that honestly does a lot for Mystico. Eventually, Mystico turns it into high gear after a whiffed splash, hitting a couple arm drags, some big dives, bunch of enziguris. Ultimo Guerrero then hits a gourd buster off the top rope for a 2 count. Mystico with more enziguris, hitting a run off the top, attempting a run off the top. Ultimo Guerrero catches him, hitting a powerbomb off the top rope for a 2 count. Eventually, Mystico fights back with a Rana off the top for a 2 count. Ultimo Guerrero with a roll-up for a 2 count. Trading clotheslines, another Rana. Then Mystico with a La Mystica to pick up the win. And as he's celebrating, out comes his next opponent. A match I never thought I'd get to see, but I welcome it as Austin Aries attacks Mystico post-match, hitting the brainbuster for the exclamation point. I am so excited to see that match. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Aries right now, these two are easily the best wrestlers on the planet. And seeing them going one-on-one in I think it's a couple of weeks, it's going to be bueno. So, that's it for MLW Slaughterhouse. A very entertaining, yet it kind of felt chaotic, but in a good way, if that makes any sense. I really enjoyed the show. If you haven't seen it yet, I'm pretty sure it's up on YouTube right now. You can watch the whole show for free on MLW's YouTube. So, that is it for me. I hope you all enjoyed. Please join me next Monday where I review more wrestling shows. Till next time, happy wrestling, everybody. Peace.